All right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Angus Cloud, Chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission. This is our May meeting, May 19th, 2023. I will begin by checking who's here from the commission. In the room with me is Abby DiMolina.
Hello.
And Mickey Rowland.
Here.
Clement Durkis. Here. And on the screen, we've got Tom Montgomery.
Here.
And do we have anyone else on the screen?
No.
So we have Holly Backus with us.
Present.
And looks like we have a couple of guests, Rita Carr, welcome, and Hillary Rayport. Welcome. So let's begin with any public comment. We really only have two members of the public. Any comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the first item on the agenda.
Different agendas.
I didn't get a chance.
You're welcome to use this one.
Just that.
Outcomes from the annual town meeting, the articles of preservation concern. One that isn't on here that I think was a win for Nantucket was the lighting article. That definitely helps with I think our environment. But then there are others. Are there any comments from board members about any of the other articles? 36 is listed first. Any comments? I think it's an important discussion, and hopefully the HTC will take that onto their agenda, and it's exciting to hear what the consultant has to bring forth. Do we have any idea about a timeline for that, Holly?
For the independent review,
Yes.
yeah, that will be later in the year. We're working through the contract right now with an APC.
Okay. So probably the fall or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. But yes, that's, the HDC administrator article was definitely something that, you all heard me at town meeting. Let's have the review if that's something that needs to be done.
So the conclusion will hopefully happen this year, sometime in the fall or late fall.
They're actually going to be physically here in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There'll be boots on the ground, people, trainers,
Good. And they'll have access. I mean, they'll be interviewing a number of different
They will
people.
be.
I'd love to speak with them.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Good.
Yep. And I think you all saw the draft scope that was vetted through both the HGC and the select board. So that's pretty much it.
Any comments on Article 62 about division of land? That's something that I think a number of us are familiar with just through advisory or
I have a
HTC.
question, did they ever get the data to see how often this comes up as a scenario, like the scenario Emily was referencing? I know that I had heard that they were gonna try and get some data on it. Did we ever see any of the data?
Don't know. Holly, do you know of any
Mhm.
data? I personally, and I don't follow real estate that much, but through HTC, I'm familiar with two properties that have had potential negative effects from that system.
I don't even think the frequency is the issue. I think it's just whenever it happens to even one particular parcel, it could be, terrible for the neighborhood,
Both of these were exactly that circumstance where there was a barn or a garage.
Right.
And in one of the cases, it was a historic structure that was slated for either demo or removal. So
Yeah.
the whole point of, it being there and then, a plan for development in an extremely inappropriate way, replacing it. So I think we should still be thinking about that.
Angus, could I ask a question about that?
Please go ahead, Hillary.
Yeah, hi, thanks. You know, we have, well, you have an asset, which is a member of this commission is an alternate on the planning board. And I thought it was really unfortunate that this didn't pass. It didn't pass by 5 votes. And I spoke to, one woman who was sitting behind me who she voted no. And she felt that there was, it was just clear she didn't really understand it. And, the planning board said they wanted some more time. So maybe it could be a collaboration to figure out something to bring back at a special town meeting from the planning board that would satisfy this commission and could be a unified message. Which is, I think, what Emily really hoped would happen, but it didn't. Yeah, that's just some thoughts. I don't know, are there restrictions on zoning bylaws, like if it doesn't pass, when you can bring it back? Holly, do you know?
I really don't know that. I on this topic, I can speak for the fact that 4181Ls are few and far between, and I can say that because I was the former planner for the planning board, so they weren't all the time. It was few and far between, so, as far as numbers go. But no, I don't know the question to the answer to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I worked with, I know to answer the question about frequency, Emily went back and counted. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was like, when Holly, when you were working for the planning department, it was like a couple a year. And last year, I think there were 8. So, there's a finite number because there are only so many lots where it's possible, but it's become like an advertised real estate development strategy. You see ads saying 4181L division opportunity, which was never really a thing before. So I do think there are not that many that it should be a concern, but they're enough that it should be a concern, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's my thought. I just thought maybe it would be an opportunity for a partnership to really explore and understand the issue and explain it in a unified way that everybody could get on the same page about.
Thank you, Hillary. That probably fits in with our education. It's just good to know what the issues are. I mean, it sounds like the numbers are minuscule, but huge impact. Both of these that I'm familiar with were Main Street, Sconset and Main Street, Nantucket town. So they both would have had great impacts. If there are any further comments on that, we could go on to 102. Or if there are any others that people have comments on. Tom, thank you for speaking up at town meeting about that one.
No problem. It was a little before the horse, but I think we needed just to get it on the record, which is why I stood up.
I think that's right. There's a lot of planning to be done, but some planning has been done. Enough to, that public release, press release that came out with the images of the flooding and proposed plan of 31 Easy Street, where it's a park. It's a path and trees and a parking lot. So there really wasn't any sort of acknowledgement about the building. So I appreciate that's hopefully going to be part of the discussion in the future. Any other Comments, anyone? All right, so next on the agenda are the Nantucket Historical Commission goals and objectives update. And Abby, thank you for doing another one of your charts here. Are there any comments about what is on this?
I could talk through just a couple of things that I updated, if that's helpful for everybody.
That'd be great. Thanks, Abby.
So what I did is previous status, if it's the previous month, and then current status is
Yeah,
so we can see it. Is just what it is for this month. And so for a couple that I put completed just because we had like put a specific goal, which I bolded and put them as complete. So I think everyone knows the phase 3 work has begun. So that one I think is self-explanatory. It's still green. That work's ongoing. The work for the CPC grants, that's ongoing. I know I'm working on an outline, and so I think I'll probably bring that to the next meeting.
Great.
So for those two, I know the date we have is September, but that would actually be when we would present to them, but I want to bring something sooner. So just so we can all look at it, talk about it, and we want to like socialize it over the summertime. So that way, hopefully it's more of a, they're aware what's coming, no surprises to everybody on it.
and if you don't mind, on the note of CPC grants, I was just mentioning this, so. With the sewer force main project that is ongoing with the sewer department, there were a few add-ons to the contract or the bid. And one of them included Winter Street, which to bring it back to cobble, because we know it's historically cobble. And that's something that we'll be applying for CPC funds for, so that is on the docket for September as well. Sorry.
No,
Thank you for that update. That's exciting that's.
They're gonna see a lot of us at
Yes,
CPC this year.
which is good. I mean, that's what it's for, and that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, great. The next thing was the CLG. I think everybody knows we have our meeting scheduled for June 1st. I think the agenda, if it hasn't been posted yet,
Not yet,
but
no.
I'm sure you'll circulate the agenda that's coming. The other thing was the tax credits. I know last month, Angus, you sent that letter on the 27th, so that one's complete. I think next month, if we don't have another letter, I'll just turn it back to green, but I just put it blue because we did send the letter and that was what we had in mind. The next thing we had talked about, I know George is not here. We had talked about building with Nantucket in mind. I think we just need to figure out what exactly we wanted to do, but our thought was we were going to create a video with some samples and then post it on the website as like an educational tool for people.
And I was gonna put that on the agenda for the CLG because you have it listed as a CLG topic, and I think it's
I was
important.
gonna mention
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be part of our discussion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's really where the joint partnership, seeing this commission assist the HDC, I think is helpful.
Great, so then hopefully next month, if we talk about it, then we can make it as started. The other thing, there was a training on the NPS, the National Park Service grants on the 16th. Angus, I know I saw you on it. I attended. I also have the materials, so I'm gonna
Yes.
circulate it to everybody.
Great.
But it was helpful, just giving background about the like historic preservation grants, the Paul Broom grant, like a bunch of those, just so when we go to the CPC, also we can talk about which grants we would think to like align with their funding. So,
I was thinking about that, Paul Groom, because it seems like there's some leeway. It like covers a lot of different things, and especially like if there were another African meeting house situation or something like that, where we can get an underrepresented
Yes,
group here supported. That's what we'd like to do.
yeah, I was thinking the same thing when they mentioned the underrepresented group, that I think we could do something like the African Meeting House, or if there was something with like the native population, something to do with that on island.
That came to mind as well, because I feel like there's so little that we
There
know, and
is,
there's so much
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, we could possibly, I don't know how strict the tribal grants, but I mean, I just think those are,
There's a lot of possibilities, and it was
Yeah.
nice to have the National Park Service do that presentation. I didn't get to see it live. Unfortunately, I got stuck.
Can you explain a little bit
Something
about what
else.
you're talking about? What kind of grant was this?
so, I can see if I can pull up.
Paul Braun.
There's a couple of grants that, the Park Service has. And
That we are eligible since we're a CLG.
yeah, and by being a CLG, you're eligible to apply for a bunch of these. I'm trying, I have the slides here. I wanted to see if. So there's the Historic Preservation Fund, which I think we've applied to before, right?
The planning and survey grant,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so those are ones that we do, but as a CLG, you have access to some other grants. And so there's, like, this one is emergency supplemental, like if something happens, that's a grant you have access to. There are competitive grant programs as well. And these are the ones that we're talking about. So there's a civil rights, like an African American civil rights. So somebody who was on it was talking about, I think he was from Somerville, I want to say. And he was saying like they were talking about, they wanted to do a project for civil rights. That's something that, like, if you're doing some sort of project for that, you can get the federal funding for. There's also historic Black colleges and universities, equal rights, underrepresented communities. That's the one that Angus was talking about. But then there's also tribal heritage grants. And so that's where, if theoretically, if we had a project we wanted to do somewhere on island with like the native population, that could be something that would potentially be eligible for a tribal grant. Then there's Save America's Treasures.
Mhm.
And I don't know.
Well, nonprofits, that was another
Yeah.
thing too. It was ones that said, okay, you could pair up with a nonprofit or a nonprofit could apply for. So there's all those different things, but yeah, you got the PDF. I got the PDF. I can send it out to everybody.
Yeah, I have I was just looking at the Save America's Treasures, like, it looks like it's a couple, this one's like churches. The Save America's Treasure, all these are obviously national, so you have a lot of competition, but they funded, that one's like over 300 million since 1999, so it's a lot of money.
And one thing Megan from the National Park Service had mentioned is that there's a lot more money that's being allocated through Congress
Mhm.
here lately than there has been historically. She's like, I'm not gonna question it, so we're just gonna keep on, assisting with this. But it was nice to have this training, I think, from something that MHC promoted. So Jen was, obviously the kickoff for it, but it was the National Park Service explaining the ins and outs of these things. So I
Yeah.
thought that was very, very helpful. And I hope they have more of
Save
those. trainings.
America's Treasures, that could perhaps apply to Grant Point Light.
Possible. I don't know.
Possibly.
I mean, yeah.
I think it would depend.
Good thinking.
Also, there's this one, the semi-quincentennial grants,
Mm.
those are for things that have to do with, founding of the nation, so if we have stuff that old, it's possible as well.
Yep. Masons.
I mean, but the one,
We go further back than that.
Yeah, they just hit
The-
250.
the one that we thought was interesting was the Paul Brune Historic Revitalization. This is, again, it's a grant program. You can make sub-grants for preservation, but it's for rural communities.
Which
And so luckily, Nantucket's considered a rural community. So this is one that I did a lot of research about, and so we could possibly set up our sub-grant program through that. And if we're trying to protect, different properties on the island, things like that. So that might be a good way for us to do that. And again, this one it's for nonprofits and CLGs, but the grants go from 200 to 750,000. So we would be able to probably create something that would, make a difference. And so I think we hope that we would be able to do that.
So there's a Native American burial ground
Mhm,
near my comment.
Mhm.
mhm.
If there are others on the island.
Probably ones that are
Probably.
undiscovered.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
Exactly.
yeah, I think those are, they try to be kept hidden.
Correct. Yeah.
Probably true.
Yeah.
But they are hidden. I mean, who knows where they are? I'm not even sure I am. So maybe we don't want to bring those.
Yeah, but there's
That's it.
definitely, I think we can all agree that there's underrepresented history on Nantucket that's really, that could hit the mark on some, I mean, even women. I
Yeah,
mean, women
there is.
played such a prominent role during the whaling era, keeping this island afloat, literally, that we could probably tap into stuff like that. too.
Yeah, because we could, there's a HER grant that
Yep.
is for women.
So there's
There also, though,
possibilities.
I was just thinking, the one you mentioned, like, we talked about the lighthouse, there is maritime heritage program as well. So I think this, we just need to explore and learn more,
Yeah.
but that's why,
Yeah.
I mean, it was really helpful, as Holly mentioned, to be on there and learn a little bit about these. And, they really encourage us to, look at past projects, things like that. And the great thing is a lot, all this information, for instance, like the Paul Green, they're all online and available, so you don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel.
Right.
So,
Well,
so anyway, sorry, that was long-winded, but that was the training, so that was on Tuesday.
Maybe there's a,
And I'll send these slides out.
something that we could put on the slide, move up the National Park Service grants under grants as a, like an ongoing discussion of possible projects for these. if
Okay,
at all possible.
I can,
Because that was also another thing that they had mentioned is, starting early, like, don't think for this year, think for down the road. And I think that's important, because really narrowing down what, I mean, significance is very important, obviously help the fact that we're a National Historic Landmark. We got a lot of that significance, check a box off, if you will. But planning early and trying to brainstorm what would be beneficial. Plus, there are a lot too that I'll get across my email that are for nonprofits. So I'll shoot them to Mary at MPT or Jason at MMA to say, hey, look, this is a nonprofit one that you guys could, if this fits, checks the box, if you will, if it works for them, it'd be great to pass it along. So
Thanks, Holly. Hillary, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Angus. I just wanted to go back to the comment about the cobblestones on Winter Street and the CPC grant. There's just tremendous need to restore the sidewalks along Main Street. It's a heavily traveled area. It's got two publicly accessible historic properties at the end of that street. And it's really at demolition by neglect at this point. I think everybody's aware of it. It's dangerous. And we had written a grant for design services to resolve some of the accessibility issues and just figure out like how to restore this resource to the CPC. And it wasn't awarded, but I wondered if there would be any energy or interest among the commissioners to pick that up again. I don't know if it needs to be an either or. Cobblestones on Winter Street, the cobblestones are there underneath the asphalt. It's nice, but the sidewalk, if you're going to be looking at pavement, the sidewalk is a greater need. I also actually have to ask a question. The CPC cannot be used for projects that should be municipal projects. Like, we were not able to write a grant to fund repair of the sidewalk for that purpose, but we could fund a plan for a historic restoration that could then be implemented by the municipality. And that was endorsed and signed by the town manager and requested. So I don't know, I just wonder if this commission might want to have some discussion about that in terms of planning for applying for CPC grants.
The
What do you
sidewalks
think?
are a critical part of the town infrastructure, and they're just getting worse and worse. So I think that I don't know where we get the funding, what grants are available to do that, but I think if we can get involved in it and help move that forward. We just met this morning, Holly and I met with, and Brenda McDonough with Libby regarding the sewer force main and the sidewalks that are being impacted by that. And Libby's very much in favor of, you know, improving, even if they're not being touched by the project, the adjacent sidewalks, having them repaired. So I think that the town administration will be in favor of, you know, Main Street is huge. It's just so bad it needs work. So you know, I think we should definitely get involved in that.
Holly, do we know if they have like a plan already to do any, like, do we have any idea?
Yes and no. So the Winter Street section was a bid alternate of the sewer force main overall project. Along with a slew of other different bid alternates. I believe there are plans for it. But this also ties into the CPC project that NPT and PIN did. Which what we're gonna have their final presentation in July for the Historical Commission's meeting. So that was a CPC project, and part of the sewer force main trail through that part of the OHD was Winter Street and North Liberty Street, and those are two of the streets that they utilized for this project to create this plan. And I would really, you know, I would love to see this plan be the catalyst for good best management practices when it comes to our historic district. For instance, you and I were talking with the group today about, you know, we don't want to see those round dotted, you know, things that takes an aesthetic aspect. We want to see the same exact existing material, just flush if there's an accessibility perspective. That, for my opinion, should be a BMP across the board for all town projects, retaining our historic identity, and it follows obviously other best management practices that we've seen in the past.
So what's the best way for us to assist the town in moving any of this forward? Other than what we've already done or are doing?
Hillary, can you tell me what the cost of that? We applied to the CPC for a grant to do this Main Street sidewalk. Do you have the cost? Remember the cost? Of that?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. You know, the number 72,000 is coming to mind, but here's the thing, that plan looped in a concept of using parametric digital design to address the accessibility concern. The idea behind that grant application, which is done and could be taken up again, you know, perhaps with more success in a different environment. So, you know, the grant is it's been filed with CPC, and I can share it again. I think I have a copy of it, but it had two components. One was to build on the work of the sidewalk pavement survey and study that NPT had done, and to take that knowledge from that first CPC funded project and apply it to create an actual design and restoration in a specific location. And that included material study, sourcing, identifying areas where material needed to be replaced, where material, and sourcing appropriate replacement material, identifying material that could be repaired, and creating a specification for repair. But then the second component was to digitally scan the terrain and the materials and use that scan as information to create a parametric model that could be manipulated by an engineering firm to adjust the slope all along. Another component was to resolve the issues with trees and tree roots in an appropriate way with a certified arborist. And all of those components were part of the grant. But what I, upon reflection, thought was that actually the scanning and the parametric map modeling might not actually be feasible. So it's probably a good thing that they passed on the grant. I don't think anybody understood that part. You know, we had a demo. I think people just got lost. But what we heard, and Mary can comment on this, and Rita probably, was that you really can't scan Main Street unless you remove all the cars. There's just a lot of technical problems. Like they were going to scan all of Winter Street, and I think they had problems completing it. So I do think a lot of work has been done on the grant. I think it's needed. The scope of the grant is correct. You know, we did work, Mickey, you and I worked closely with Ken Bogran to create the grant. So that's all good. But I think we should probably, this commission, if they want to bring it back, should revisit certain elements of that grant. And really, I think focus on what is going to be hard for a contractor to do, which is the historic materials and the design sensibility, the aesthetic sensibility around resolving issues with the trees, and working with an arborist. I think that would be a great value add, because then they would have a design and a specification which they could take to Victor Brandon or CNC or whoever's doing the work, because they don't have that expertise. So doing that ahead of time would be really, really valuable. I'm sorry, you just asked me about how much it costs, and I just told you all of that.
That's helpful. I'm just wondering, how, I mean, what is the process? Who initiates, this project to just, where does it all start?
The sidewalk project or the grant project?
I guess the study as to how to do the sidewalk properly.
Well, I think Abby can answer. I mean, Abby has been working on, and Holly have been working with these grants. I mean, you got to get the grant awarded and then you put it out to bid. And we had identified, Preservation Institute Nantucket, and some of their longtime partners, like Glenn has a materials conservation group that has worked with PIN for a long time. And then we had also identified some arborists. We had all the contractors, they created the specification. And then, the historical commission was going to oversee it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, with what Hillary's talking about, Main Street, right there where you come down Pleasant Street and you take the left-hand turn between the West Brick and the Macy House. We had tried to get the DPW to fix the really bad repair there that was happening with all those articulated dump trucks and the heavy machinery that was working on that house on the left-hand side there for a month, for a year and a half. And they did something, but now it's starting to fail again. There's a big deep hole there, and there's a crosswalk that goes across there. And that is all, I think, related to the curbstones. My God, those curbstones have got to be 14 inches tall in some places there, where Hillary's talking about, where the sidewalk is some of the worst on Main Street. And I'm just wondering whether or not, if we did get the DPW to fix Main Street right there, or that's part of all this grant money that we're talking about to straighten out the hole that's been created there, as well as lowering the sidewalk, the curbstones, the tree roots, and all the rest of it. Because that's one section between the, I don't know where you'd begin. I would guess at Fair Street, all the way up to the Civil War Monument is really where most of the tourists want to go view. I mean, there's other places up Main Street beyond that, but that's really where all the mansions are and everything that they talk about. That's the area where we've got to really hone in on. And I'm wondering whether or not, when they come across Winter Street, they're going to have to take up Main Street anyway. They will cross over to Pine when they do the forced main. Whether we could get, the other part up further up Main Street that I'm talking about done at the same time.
I'll say this, it is difficult to add on to projects. For instance, when we were out there this morning, these things that you all from a accessibility perspective want to see fixed, which makes sense. But at the same time, that's an added cost onto the overall project, and that's the biggest thing.
Those were
Um,
at least adjacent to the. sewer
Correct,
line, not a-
whereas-
or a Perpendicular.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so that's a little bit different. But I know Pleasant Street is something that's been on, I guess, on the minds of DPW and transportation, so I know that should be in the works.
That's good. That's the
Yeah.
worst part
Yeah.
of Main Street right there.
Yeah.
If I could just comment, because I spent so much time learning about this stuff and working on it, and the Historical Commission created a whole engineering study for streets. The from my perspective, the terrific benefit of returning Winter Street to cobblestones is that specification has been written according to the engineering study that this commission developed and accepted and gave to the town.
Mhm.
So the problem with Main Street is that it was recobbled not according to any kind of specification. It was just kind of like a modern specification. It wasn't designed with an understanding of constructing a cobblestone road. So I think it'll be super interesting to see Winter Street return to cobbles, because you're going to be working with the cobbles that were laid down by people who knew what they were doing a long time ago and then covered over with asphalt. Those cobblestones were selected to be cobblestones. At least that's what we think. I mean, who knows what we'll find when they take the asphalt off. And it's going to be specified according to that preservation engineering study, which was included in the bid alternate.
Yes.
So it's going to be permeable as opposed to non-permeable, which is a big problem with Main Street. So I think even though it's not as important, if it's in the works, I wouldn't want to do anything to hold it up, because it's going to be a terrific test case for reconstructing Main Street, which is going to take a really long time to do. But the one other thing about the money and Pleasant Street is that this town has just been incredibly generous with earmarking funds for sidewalk repair. I think there's $4 million set aside for sidewalk repair just generally. And then there's also additional money, on Main Street. And then there's additional money that was reserved at town meeting in 2022 for Pleasant Street. But the problem is, and this is where I think it's really critical for this commission to step in, is that the people who are going to be repairing those sidewalks, they're not preservation people. They don't have that background. They don't have access to the materials analysis, to the conservation methods, and to the sourcing the replacement material. That's really a specialist activity. And that was what the prior grant was all about, was giving them that knowledge. So in the same way we developed a specification for a cobblestone road, and we could say, okay, here's your specification, bid it out to the specification, the road should be right. I think there's a strong argument to do the same with the sidewalks. I'd really love to see that grant spiffed up, improved, and brought back to CPC.
So Hillary, there is this, do we have a spec for repairing sidewalks as opposed to?
That
We have a spec for a permeable base and for setting curbstones, but there was no work done on the materials in the sidewalks.
That came up this morning. Frank is the engineering firm guy that was,
Jason Sawyer, yep.
dealing with
Yeah.
the whole project. And I asked him what they were planning on using for the base, for the repair work for the sidewalks. And, he actually didn't know if there was a specific Nantucket spec for sidewalk work. And I thought that there was, maybe we hadn't gone to sidewalks, but,
Yeah, there's a spec for the curbstone, for setting the curbstone, but
Okay.
not for the bedding of the sidewalk, is my
And-
recollection.
And the cobblestones.
And of course for the cobblestones, yeah.
So what is,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just, do we know what that best practice is? Is it a sand base? I mean, now they're just using stone dust, but it's probably not. what we
No, I
really
don't
see.
think stone dust is the right way, I think is what was the.
Yeah, it's the enemy. base.
So what I learned was that there's different degrees of stone dust, and then there's, I think that we did not develop a spec, but we could talk, there could be a conversation using the work that was done for a permeable cobblestone setting, And that could be translated to the sidewalk setting. But it's, you know, that all of that would be additional work that could be done. It hasn't been done, to my knowledge.
I think Frank was talking about even a bituminous base, which I'm sure is exactly what we don't want.
Oh,
So, you know, they're about to do all this repair work. I don't know when, in the fall perhaps, this over the winter,
Well,
the sidewalk repair.
the additional stuff that we were talking about today, no. Because they need to itemize all that and figure out where the budget and, yeah, all that stuff. But what's already been obviously bidded on, yeah, that work.
I think this commission is going to have very little control over when sidewalks get repaired and what sidewalks get repaired. But what this commission could provide is proper information for the people who are repairing them whenever they want to repair them, to make sure they get repaired in a restoration and preservation mode, as opposed to a reconstruction
Right.
or replacement mode.
So to move forward on that, the next step is to represent the grant to the CBC again. It's,
And ask for design on the sidewalk.
would that be the next step?
Well, I think it sounds like there has to be a lot of work done on the grant itself
Yeah.
before it can be represented, and I think we also would have to find out. If they didn't, do we know why they didn't accept it the first time? Because my guess is if you represent the same thing and they said no, then they're gonna say no again, so there's gotta be a reason why.
Well, I think Hillary explained the reason that it was supposed to be, it was kind of invading town,
I think there was a
municipal.
conversation about
Yeah.
that.
Well, no, it wasn't. If the grant had been to do the work on the sidewalk, that would have been something the CPC could not give money to. And that's actually been a topic of litigation. So it's airtight. There was another town that wanted to use CPC funds to repair a sidewalk, and it kind of went through the courts and they said, no, you can't do this. So you can't use it for municipal infrastructure because it's taxpayer money that's given for a certain purpose. And but the design is okay. And you know, if you guys want to bring this grant back, I would, you know, I don't want to, if you want to talk to me more about what happened and why it happened, I'm so happy to help in any way you want to have the help. Just let me know.
For that, Hillary, since you've put so much work into it, you probably have a better understanding than all of us. But you know, can we present this in a different way that avoids the rejection that we got the last time? How would we tailor it?
Well, I honestly think not having me involved would be a pretty good way to get it more likely to be approved.
I mean, if we
Sad.
bring it
I'm
back,
sad to say. I'm
they're
sad
gonna know
that's-
though that you're the one who did it the first time, so they're still gonna know. I mean.
Well, then shame on them doubly. Shame on
Well,
them
I
doubly.
mean, you
But
think that
I don't have to have anything to do with it. It's just something that needs to be done.
We make
This one of our goals is to deal with the sidewalk issue.
Yeah, let me put,
I think bring up under grants.
should we, yeah.
Well, yeah, could this come from some other grant besides CPC?
Oh, yeah.
Or
It's
is
not
that,
that much.
Mhm.
72.5, whatever it is. that.
Well, I mean, actually, going back to the training, if we are looking at like historic preservation and we're talking about something to do, like maybe it could be eligible for federal funding because we're trying to preserve
Park Service?
like the Park Service, the landmark, the sidewalks, like maybe that's a different angle. And then we wouldn't be as maybe hamstrung by the CPC, because they are very strict of like what you can do not. So that maybe that could be a way, like we could explore that, and maybe what we could do is talk to the National Park Service and be like, hey, because I'm sure I would imagine some other municipalities, especially if you think of somewhere like DC or something, like
The closest that has very similar to us, that's a National Historic Landmark, is New Bedford. even though their National Historic Landmark is small, they
Oh,
have
yeah.
very similar cobblestone streets.
I
and
went to-
sidewalks and-
I went to the training there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I mean, it just might be worth us seeing that maybe that's a different way, and then. We don't necessarily have to go to the same well of CPC,
But before that, we still have to sort of fine tune.
what exactly we're looking for.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, if you could get federal funding to do the actual work, then like you wouldn't necessarily have to be like, oh, it's only design and not the work, you know what I mean? So,
It seems like this, in order to get bids and so forth, we need to know what the project is. So it seems like doing the specifications would be the first
yeah,
element.
You know, I have the budget. Do you guys want me to show it to you?
For the study,
Yeah,
sure.
okay, I'm gonna share.
While you're organizing that, Hillary, Holly, what do you know about the sidewalks in New Bedford? Did they restore them? Or was this a study to?
I don't know if they did a
Things?
study at all. I just know that it's a very similar National Historic Landmark, that they have very similar, I mean, they have cobblestones, they have the granite curbs. Just they're, you know, it's right around the corner, and they maintain it. And it
Yeah.
seems like it has been maintained. And I think that's also something very important is maintenance. We all know is the best
Huge.
form of preservation.
Absolutely.
So, not just having specs for installation, but specs for maintenance would also be a big.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's something you wanna do, because I went to training there. Do you remember when that was? I think it was in the fall.
But it
right?
was in the fall, yeah.
I went to training there and I met a bunch of the folks in New Bedford, so I can go back to like my contacts, as there are a couple people. I could reach out to somebody, because I think there was a couple people there from their historical commission.
To know
So-
where
Yeah.
the thing came from and.
Yeah, I could just tell them like, hey, this is what we're thinking about, and like pick their brains, but I have a couple contacts because people there were super nice. And they held the meeting in this church that they had completely salvaged, and it's beautiful. It's a really nice spot. So I know exactly where Holly's talking about, like they did a lot of really nice work there.
Mhm.
So if you guys want, I can reach out.
That'd be
That'd be
awesome.
great.
Cause I can at least be like, hey, remember me? I saw you guys a couple months ago, but they were very nice, so I think they'd be happy to share.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So Abby, know that, that we did interview the folks in New Bedford when we prepared the preservation engineering study, and all the work that this commission kind of was sort of the founding motivation for restarting this commission was the work on the streets. And I don't remember the woman's name, but I have a bunch of emails from her, and I think we included the New Bedford design guidelines in the report that is published on the Historical Commission website.
Great.
Because they stood out locally for having specified streets and historic materials in streets in their design guidelines. So this was this was what the budget was. We had all of this image collection to create this point cloud, and this is what I'm saying, and this constructing this parametric model. And I think this is what should have some fresh eyes on it, and talk with, the Commission on Disabilities as to whether or not we actually do want to do this, and if it's feasible and going to get the kind of slope. We wanted to model the slope, and we wanted to create a parametric model so that whoever was actually doing the design, the field drawings to reconstruct this sidewalk could be having a very precise level of control over the slope to meet the ADA accessibility standard.
That shouldn't be that hard, Hillary, because this slope, the cross slope is critical. But the
Mhm.
actual slope can follow the roadway. It doesn't have to be.
Right. It has to be not a certain percentage more than the roadway.
But we have so many concerns, the trees, the threshold,
Right.
the houses, how much curb is exposed on the road and the drainage and the pitch and all those things.
Yeah.
That's why I think that the imaging would be so valuable, not just
Yeah.
in you know, rallying people behind because there would be a better understanding, but for the technicians who, you know, have to actually implement it, to have a real visual of what
Yeah.
it seems like that would be important to keep.
Well, you guys might take a sharp look at this and decide you want to keep it. And then the question would be, would SGH want to continue with this bid? Okay, so then we had tree conditions. So we had image collection for 10,500, construct parametric model for 38,820. Then we had tree conditions, which was an inventory of existing trees, a toolkit of strategies for treating the trees correctly, and possibly doing route exploration with an air spade to really understand what we were dealing with. Then task 4 was existing conditions assessment and treatment. This was all the historic materials, estimate the missing and replacement materials, and creating a report. So we actually had a specification of what could be reused and what needed to be replaced, which I think is really important. And that was 7,650. Then we had all this community engagement because we wanted people to support the work on the sidewalk. And there was going to have to be more acceptance that these sidewalks were going to look different in places to meet the accessibility goals. So we had some community engagement. And yeah, then a final design. And so finally, we would deliver a design schematic, rehabilitation, accessibility, and the whole thing was $77,420. That was what we were asking from the CPC. And as you can see, it's $49,320 was from the scanning and the parametric modeling. And
So
that
the
was
the reason for eliminating that would be strictly economics.
Well, I think it just,
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
$2,000, like, the projects that they award money to,
I know,
it's tons
just-
of money. I wouldn't do it for that, because I don't think it would be worth it. Like,
My concern was that they wouldn't actually be able to generate the data. When I saw, and I don't know if Mary and Rita are live with us, but they had such a problem creating these scans. I mean, SGH was going to work off the Preservation Institute Nantucket digital laser scans, or whatever it's called, this digital scanning. But then it turned out that they couldn't produce the scans. So it just made me a little nervous. Like if I were an investor, I'd be saying, I don't know if this is, it sounds good on paper, but I don't know if it's actually implementable. That was my real question.
Other than obstacles like cars, was there anything else in the way of producing these scans? I mean, they're so precise.
It's really a question for PIN, Preservation Institute Nantucket, and yeah, I mean, certainly we could get permission to close down Main Street from like 4 a.m. I don't know, 5 a.m. or something, and get the students out there they were going to use the students. The students were going to do the scanning.
So, I mean, and that's kind of what I was mentioning, that CPC project that PIN and NPT did together, that they're going to be presenting a lot of that kind of stuff in July, more than what we've seen. So I don't know if you guys remember that during COVID, we had there was a presentation that was done that Kim Rose, at the Athenaeum. So that is going to be the presentation, and we'll be able to see the final draft. So I think that's important, just to know exactly the work that they've done and the scheme they did.
yeah, maybe we should wait until July and see the kind of work that they present.
I
and then
think
we
it's
can
important.
Use that as maybe. a
Because
base.
it's also here's also this, it's a CPC funded project on what we're really talking about. That might be a better catalyst to say, okay, here's a completed project. It had X, Y, and Z involved in it, but we want to take Z and right. And so it might not be a bad idea to wait.
That's a good idea.
So let's just put that,
I'll put it on the goals. I
And-
can
and
put
put
it
the
up there and
date,
just put
yeah.
the date.
It's the
Like,
July meeting,
is-
July 21st.
Yeah, I'll put that as the next date, and that way we can have it on the list.
I mean,
But-
that, so just you all that, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing that meeting is gonna be solely for their public participation required, last final presentation, if you will. So I know MPT is gonna be pushing that out to their people. Obviously, we're on from the town perspective. I think this will be good. Have a big conversation and get it out there. That, you know, we're great project that CPC funded, so,
All right,
That'll be exciting to see.
yes.
okay, so I'm gonna add that to the goals.
Yeah.
Is one of our goals, and I'll put the July date as our like next date.
And Abby and Mickey, and Angus, I'll send you the grant materials that I have. I mean, I really liked it. It was a joint application with the Commission on Disabilities, so I think that would be really good to retain, and maybe you can make it your own and tie it into this other grant, and it can get some momentum.
It's so comprehensive, it
Yeah.
makes all kinds of sense,
Mhm.
so. As Holly's saying, it would be, it might be. Beneficial to just piggyback this on that presentation.
Oh,
Abby, are you finished?
no, I wasn't even finished. That was a long detour on
Great.
education, but I guess the last thing was we were talking about is. We're gonna make a separate section for grants. It sounds like we have two. One is talking about the NPS stuff, and then we're gonna add one for this goal. So those are gonna be. Under the grant section will be two more goals we can add. The next couple education ones are, we talked about partnering with Egan Maritime. Holly is contacting Carlisle after she hears from the state archaeologist.
Yeah, I gotta
David
touch base.
Robinson.
David, I haven't heard from him in a while, but, yeah, I think, I don't know if I mentioned to you all that he contacted me to, see if I would give him a letter of recommendation. They paired with, I cannot think of that organization of the state's name. But another state organization, to apply for, funds from NOAA. And this would be it would actually be more from a cultural perspective, but also from a, coastal resiliency perspective too. About mapping more of the shipwrecks around the coast. Because of course, there's another aspect of that of knowing where our sediment is going around the island. Anyway, long story short, he had asked me if I would write a letter of recommendation, and if it gets awarded, that I would assist with that project. So, and I was told I should hear back from him in June. So hopefully that'd be nice if this is something, because it would benefit Nantucket from a cultural perspective. And of course, I met him when he came down to look at the Warren Sawyer. But my understanding, the report that he was writing is not finalized, but I know Carlisle with Egan Maritime is wanting to have an education component, and I told her, look, the historical commission would be willing to, assist any effort on that, so. I'll let you know when I hear more about it.
Holly, you're making me think about what in the excavation for these wind turbines. Are they digging and come across a shipwreck? Like
Yeah.
what provisions are in place for that?
Well, that's kind of where all that, there's a lot of studies that get done. I want to say Epsilon, and a couple of those other kind of preservation consultants have been doing a lot of that archaeological survey, because of course, it's not just that too, it's the Paleolithic forms under the ocean floor that also have sentimental and cultural significance for the Native Americans. So of course, that's all other review process that's above our own Section 106 review, because of the nature of the federally recognized tribes are. They have a federal consultation that we are not privy to. So yeah, there's a lot to it. There is absolutely a lot to it, but this would be more for, I think, around our island itself. But my understanding would also be for the rest of the Commonwealth, because there's been more than just our shipwrecks that have been discovered this past year. Talking to David, he said that there was about 3 other places, and Yeah, plus the one I think that was down in Florida, so that there's been a lot of them up and down the eastern seaboard. So.
I want to say I heard of one in Virginia.
I think there's one in Florida, Virginia, and then I think there's two more in Mass. But
All similar to our situation of erosion.
erosion and
exposes-
accretion, yep. Yep. So it'd be interesting to see what goes on with this project. Hopefully it gets funded. I'll keep you all posted on that.
And that whole wind farm, I mean, so you're thinking they're gonna be digging to put the posts in. What do they do with all the dirt? They drag it up and put it on a barge, and I just
No
can't
idea.
visualize this whole. It's very upsetting.
It is.
So if they found, someone's gonna be sifting through all that sand to find artifacts.
I don't know.
No idea.
Strata.
Oh, I did, I found out who the lobbyist is that we need to talk to, by the
Oh,
way,
good.
in New York. I'll find the name. I talked to someone from my work to find out who could tank it in Congress. So I have to find his name.
The next thing was the NARAB workshop that we did was that last year or the year before? The last couple of years have blurred in my head. But I've been speaking with Laura Hanson, who's in charge, I guess, of getting their education component together. And their date is actually coming up around the corner, June 7th. And last I spoke to her, she had said that there was issues with their location of where they were gonna have it at, so she was gonna keep me posted. But it sounded like Marion, who's with the state, said it was okay for us to have another talk about history and historic preservation and historic structures. And I think this ties back into, oh, and speaking of that, Mary from MPT, thank you, Mary, has agreed to participate in that as well with me. So, and I think Abby said she wanted to participate as well. So I think this will be good. It's a little short notice, but at the same time, topics are important. So there's room to be repetitive. But I think going back to, yeah, June 7th.
June 7th is.
Literally right around the corner.
It is, that's just, what part of it? Is it setting the agenda?
No,
Or,
June 7th
like,
is what
that's
their
actual
actual training, yeah, and they don't even know where their location, yeah,
They
so
know their location or
They
need one?
don't.
They don't, they need one.
apparently there's been issues with that. So again, I've
Confident
asked
this level?
Laura to keep me posted
Jeez.
on what's going on and where we would be in the schedule and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I've got the PowerPoint from the last time, but I thought it would be a good point to bring up this whole, we've always said that the realtors, and it was nice when having David, him for being a realtor himself, realtors are the first point of contact for a lot of these people. And what they say is important. And going back to what we originally brought up with the warrant articles, 4181Ls, and if they're emphasizing those, that's kind of a, a negative, obviously, thing right at the get-go. So getting them to understand, it might be financially, a great idea for you to mention that, but from a preservation perspective, you're actually hindering us. You're hindering our historic district. And, we really don't want you to emphasize that as a thing, because that's not thinking preservation.
Well, they need to know what their clients are gonna be up against. too, as
Correct.
They try to develop these programs.
Correct. And obviously knowledge is half the battle. So bringing that component into it somehow, I think is going to be important. But again, I told Laura, we're interested, we would want to assist. I mean, that we thought that we got such great feedback last year when Hillary, myself, and Mary were there to talk about the Nantucket Historic District, talk about National Register and what it means to be a historic district, and just emphasizing the character and setting of Nantucket. But I do think talking about the ongoing survey work is very imperative to get people to understand there's more information that will be available. There is more information now through this work. And what we the biggest thing is you can't preserve what you don't know you don't have. So, emphasizing that, just assume everything's contributing and go from there, because really, I think more structures, even with the construction going on, I think we have more structures that are contributing than people realize.
Well, and it'd be better
Um,
if they default to like at least asking as opposed to not even asking. the
Right.
question.
Right.
Uh,
Right,
So
so
it was the 7th or the 9th of.
7th of June.
So with this coming up so soon, I mean, to create a presentation, you would almost have to just go with what you already have.
Correct.
Right, but
I-
it would be a different set of people, I assume, that are attending this.
I'm not, it depends on, it's all for their required
Right.
credits.
Yeah.
So we might have the same people, we might have a group. And that was her initial concern when I reached out to her and asked, would you all be wanting to have us come back and talk about this again, but obviously add some additional things to it. She was concerned on whether or not the state would allow that. And I guess from talking to Marion at the state, she was okay with that. But again, they're having issues with when and where and all that stuff. So at least they had the date set. I said, okay,
Okay.
keep me posted. So hopefully I'll hear more. But yeah, I kind of, because of the short notice, I kind of just wanted to keep it the way we had it and then just add in a little bit more of the survey work and what that means and the availability,
Yeah.
where people can
Well,
get this
we've got-
information.
Mhm.
And maybe even talk about a little bit about what, the nonprofits have been doing, what MPT, what Wisconsin Trust,
Mhm.
Wisconsin, Building Wisconsin in Mind, that's available on the town's website.
And also for free, I'll bring in copies.
So I know we've been advertising in a way that you guys have that available. It's actually on, if you look at the HDC
I-
agenda, we have it on
I
there
saw
as
it.
yeah,
Very
so
happy with that.
trying to promote it, but yeah, I will.
Well,
keep
I
you all
have-
posted.
I have these old slides, maybe we can work on just updating them.
Mhm.
Speaking of building Wisconsin in mind, makes me think about building with Nantucket in mind.
Mhm.
And as far as tweaking the lecture so that there's more information in there that might be different is, what are the appropriate alterations to a historic structure?
Yes,
So that people don't go in with the idea that I can triple the size of my
Yep.
house and that's fine.
or
Yeah.
just
Dig a
because
basement.
zoning allows it, that means that's what I'm gonna get, and that seems, I don't know about what you all think from seeing stuff, but I think that's also been the new mindset. They're wanting to go the maximum building envelope on the ground and
Above
And
below.
yes,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, it's, I think, an education component really and truly, and bringing people down to no, no, just because zoning says this doesn't mean this is what you can do, that's
Correct.
appropriate for the historic district. And getting, quite frankly, there's new people coming to Nantucket that don't realize that the entire island is a
Mhm.
local and national historic district. So they just some of them are coming here because it's Nantucket and they heard about it and they just want a piece of Nantucket. Okay, that's fine. But know that you're in the historic district. We get phone calls. Well, we're not downtown. Doesn't matter. So yeah, there's definitely a big education component that needs to be somehow addressed. And maybe there's a thought, and I think I brought this up before, but everything goes. Of this commission, assisting more in getting the word out of the timeless aspects of building with Nantucket in mind. Because I think we're always repetitive, the same thing over and over and over again.
Read this book.
I know.
Well, I think that is a good idea, though, is maybe we need to explore different ways for us to.
And that's why I want that as a topic with the CLG, because this commission, obviously you've all expressed it before, of being
Mhm.
supportive of the timeless qualities that are in building with Nantucket in mind, and assisting and getting people to understand it. Really and truly.
Just to open it up and look at it.
Right. Right.
Start with.
Yeah, step
And then
one,
it's there.
open it.
Right.
But I will say there's some, I think, agents that don't care.
No.
They're
there's
wanting,
definitely
some of them out there that, this is what my client wants, this is what I'm gonna ask for. Okay.
Well,
that.
and having been in, having that as a profession, there are times where a client will ask for something and that it's not right, and I would say no. But sometimes that puts a agent in a tricky
Oh,
situation
yeah.
where they don't want to say no.
Yep.
But they're counting on the policies and the process in place
To rein it
to,
in.
Yeah,
to actually say no.
Mhm.
And
right, so they don't have to be the one to say no.
right, and so,
You can present it to them. They'll just.
Right. They won't like it.
so I think that, that's really important to be able to count on.
Yeah, that is, that's actually interesting you bring it up. As a member of the planning board, we saw this come up where, there was actually someone who they were up on, like Maya Comet. And they wanted to put in this huge pool and like this huge and all this stuff. And we had to be, and I think their architect, whoever was like, yeah, it'll be fine. And we had to be like, listen, this area and like, you felt bad because of the neighbors, it's very quiet. Like I run up there and like there are homes there, but they're quiet. And then this person would put this huge thing and that's where you hope that the process, like we voted against it, or I don't think I voted on it, but like somebody had to rein it in, but to your point, it wasn't, necessarily the people who should be telling them, like, this isn't what you should do, like, we have to be
Right.
like, we had to
There-
say, this is a historic neighborhood, this is it, like, this is not in, congruent with all of the houses around it. But, you don't want to necessarily have that to be your.
Well, that's another reason why our survey work and
Yeah.
the survey plan, even though, Pal has said it's gonna take at least a decade to complete, but having the identified neighborhoods and that character and setting flat out acknowledged and get people to understand, yeah, Crossbucks, they're obviously okay to have in Nantucket, but not necessarily, Mid-Island. I mean, there are characters, features that I'd rather see a structure if it has to be moved from Sconset to Nantucket to be saved, right? But at the same time, it should stay in its vicinity where it was constructed. We have that latitude of being with a historic district without any donut holes to be able to say, hey, yeah, let's move it, and it's still contributing from the National Register's perspective. But at the same time, we want to retain, so there's a lot. And then this whole, I didn't know it was historic. I didn't know it was significant. And props to my counterparts over on the other side of the table at MPT to be able to assist with historic information to say, well, actually, yeah, this structure is not just old, it's significant in what ways. And again, the
Well, at
survey
that
work will
point,
help.
they've already bought it. So.
They
there's
have,
a certain
but-
degree of, this is my property. I own it. I should be allowed to do with it what I want to. So if we could stop that a little further down the road. Just saying, if you want to put in a movie theater and an exercise room, look somewhere else.
I also
But-
rely on, I think, some of the agents and architects, quite frankly, that are taking in on clients that, they should, some of them should know better.
Yeah.
That,
I agree.
if I have an old structure here, or, hey, even if it's mid-century, maybe there's actually something that's making it significant. Let's look into it instead of going, oh, I didn't know. Because that happens too.
So let's try to educate early on.
Yeah,
I can.
So I guess next up, I have a copy of the slides, so Holly, maybe I'll connect with you and we can update them, and then we'll share them with you guys, and if there's anything we want to add. Go from there.
That sounds good.
Can I make one comment that might be helpful to the group?
I see your hand up. Go ahead, Hillary.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. So, I gave the part of the training last year, and afterwards I had a conversation with Laura Hanson, and then another agent whose name I forget. But he had the idea that he said, we could potentially have liability here if we don't educate our clients about the historic district limits that they might face. And especially as Nantucket is increasingly popular and increasingly accessible because of all the aviation and more ferries and more capacity to get here, we have a different population coming here. And they don't know, as you just said. And his idea was, maybe we should have some language in our contracts, which specifically referenced that it's a National Historic Landmark, it's a historic district, and you might not be able to demolish what you think you could demolish, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that was, it was his idea. I think it's a really good idea because it starts a conversation. So I just wanted to pass that on. Obviously I didn't take any action on it, but this commission could, or Holly, you could.
Thank you,
Mhm.
Hillary. Do you know any chance who that was?
Oh my God. I know I have his card somewhere, and it's so funny. I rode the bus with him the other day. This guy started talking to me and I thought, how do I know this guy? How do I know this guy? And then like 2 hours later, I was like, oh, that was the realtor who wanted to put the disclaimer. So let me try to find it for you.
That's awesome. Well, it did seem like after that presentation that we did, there were a lot of realtors that were just like, that was one of the best training we've ever had, wish we had this sooner, want you guys to come back. It was nice to hear that. So, okay, well, maybe these individual realtors would want to, I don't know, embrace that education component.
What would that look like? Like a box that you check that you are aware of, whatever restrictions may apply to this piece of property?
I'm
the
wondering
contract, kind
I'm
of thing?
wondering if we're not the only historic district, right? So there's gotta be, I would think, other places that have
Or
that
could it be some kind of a
included.
generic, just so you know,
Right.
there might be restrictions. We don't know specifically to this property until we look a little further, but
Well, like on the HTC application, there's a box that you check that says, I am aware that, whatever, true divided light is different than simulated divided light, so you're kind of forced into being aware of what the restriction might be.
I've never filled out an HTC. But that would be great. I mean,
Well, so it sounds like if Hillary, you could send us or Holly the name, and then maybe we can see if we can find if anyone else does that and like how they do going.
I think trying to see what other historic districts, their realtors, every historic district has property that's sold. There's gotta be that whole concept of using the realtor process as the eyes and ears for, because unfortunately, even from a zoning perspective, as a planner outside of Nantucket, there was a lot of, I didn't know. And it's like, okay, well, sometimes that's ruled by the state. The state, when you go through a purchase of a property, is different than other states, where they're required to do X, Y, and Z. Like Massachusetts, I think you have to have your septic system, I think, up to code, whereas in other states, it's a buyer beware, it doesn't matter. I'm just curious on what other places would do, but yeah, that might be a little research to do. But I like that idea, if they're willing and able to be able to put that in there.
I don't think I'm going to be able to find his card, but Laura was there, and it kind of doesn't matter where it came from. I would just, Holly, bring it up with her and reference the conversation. She might even remember it because I think she was part of it.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
I think the last goal we had was just ongoing engagement with our peers. I think, we have that as ongoing, and then the only thing that we had already talked about as a separate goal, but I think it kind of ties in with this, is that presentation that's gonna be coming in July. which will
Oh,
be
yes,
MPT and PIN,
yes,
so,
you
So,
can
yeah.
add that on there.
so I have a couple of updates I'm gonna make to this. If you want, I can update it and just recirculate to you guys, and then we'll keep going.
So in the engagement part, maybe go ahead and reference that Penn MBT
Presentation.
presentation that'll happen. July.
We'll add it.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, maybe you can give me the date and I'll just start it.
July 21st.
There we go.
21st,
Yes,
I need to.
we're using our July meeting for that. So, awesome.
Another Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Uh,
should be a Friday,
Should be a Friday.
whatever that Friday is in July.
Oh, I'm in June. Sorry for that.
I was like,
Let's
wait,
go, let's go back to July.
it's okay.
It's
Yeah,
a,
it's the
it's a
21st.
Friday.
All right, so we're good with the goals. I think, Abby, I do appreciate you creating that because it's and I guess for having it in the discussion, I think it's very helpful because we get to talk about all the different projects and where we're at, and I think it's key.
Mhm.
So in the packet, you all saw our schedule for survey work. You know that the pin came,
We skipped over,
what?
we just skipped over the status of minute taking and posting.
Oh,
nice.
I just-
Nice work, Holly.
Well, just FYI, I think
We're all on
I'll
board here.
I'll continue to take the minutes
thank you.
and I'll circulate them to you guys. If that's what
What's
works.
going
I
on?
don't know what's going on here.
MIA, I've emailed, I called, I don't know.
Okay.
Do we, or has it already happened? Do we have commissioners up this year for reelection?
Today's the last day to submit applications and then, election.
But who's
On
up for
Tuesday.
reappointment?
Who's
There's
up?
gotta be somebody. this year.
It's David and
David in
Georgia.
Georgia.
Yes,
If they either, I mean, I assume Georgia has reapplied as David, do we know?
I was only, I
I don't
was
think
told,
Georgia has reapplied.
I-
don't know about David.
I think Erica already, she reaches out to all the incumbents, and I don't think Georgia's wanting to continue. So,
Two open seats.
Mhm.
Yep.
But as far as the minutes, I thank you for taking that on, Abby. As far as past minutes, if it's possible to reach out to the town and see if there is a way to just get transcripts of then we could edit that, so that it's not like,
So,
50 pages.
yeah.
there
so-
is some mechanism within the YouTube that you can do that.
I'll reach out to, who should I?
Erica manages the relationship with Zoom.
Okay, so I'll reach out to Eric.
But yeah, that would be awesome because
But-
that has been brought to my attention. We're asked, hey, where are your minutes? I'm like,
Yeah, so I can,
yeah.
I'll reach out to her and I can update it, but I mean, at the very least, obviously, we have today's meeting.
Yeah, great.
And, I'll try and bring us back up to speed,
thank you, Abby.
no problem. Anyway, sorry,
No, no,
continuing
no,
on with
no.
the PAL.
Where we are with. how
Yay.
the schedule.
So, yes, so PAL, as you know, we're here in, is that March? And they finished the fish lots and they went over to Brant Point, where they mostly did their work. And as they've been going through we had a meeting with them in MHC, looking at the draft sample forms that we all looked at. And we received MHC's comments. And I thought it was funny that Michael Steinitz at MHC said, you really shouldn't list shingling, roof shingling changes. And I was like, oh, no, yes, we do. Yes, we do. That's a Nantucket thing. We need to have that on there. So he's like, okay. And he's like, yeah, I take that back. I take that back. That's not the first time where he's taken back a comment on what would they've done or what I've put in something or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool. He's like, yep, understand. So as you remember, we have 42 from coming out of Brant Point and 98 out of the fish lots, finishing up the fish lots. The 42 Brant Point ones are going to be divvied up into where, as you see here. So those are the dates that Ginny will be submitting them to me. And then I will in turn forward them all to the commission so you all can review them. Like to turn around those as soon as you have a chance to review, so I can get them back to her with any substantive comments. But really, I think we and MHC were really happy with the quality of the forms that we received for the sample that 2 in Brant Point. And there was, since we met with MHC that one day on Zoom, Ginny and Aaron emailed me to say that there was one they had in Brant Point. I think it was the one on Henry. Remember that one? That
Was too new to.
it was too new, and this is another case of where the 89 survey was completely incorrect. But I'm still scratching my head on how this one would have been done, but they used the same picture. It's the same structure that's there now, but it was built in 88, the year before they did the work. So I'm really scratching my head on how they went ahead. I think it was AJ Souza that did some of that work in the 80s. And then the rest, but
Which one, which house on Henry Street?
I think it was one Henry, the
Is
one
that
in
the
the
one on
corner.
corner of Walsh and Henry?
Yeah, it's almost like a typical Nantucket with
That was
Cable
relocated.
was it relocated?
Because it was my client, it was
Okay.
facing Walsh, and for whatever reason, he wanted it to face Henry, I believe, or maybe vice versa. So it's on the same lot that it started, but it's just been reoriented,
Okay,
And then added on.
probably added on, yeah.
so it was
Right.
probably added on in the 80s, not necessarily,
Yeah,
and
this is-
relocated on the 80s.
Yeah, it would have been in the 80s.
But do we have any idea of how old it is?
Building
Y-
itself,
Yeah,
it's pretty old.
do you think it is? Okay,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what I thought, and
No,
I
it's
wanna
definitely an old
say-
building, yeah.
But so do you think though, maybe it's referencing the last thing, which is either when they did. the
That's a
relocation
possibility.
Or the addition only.
I didn't see it. So,
because with that information, Ginny had recommended adding scratching that one this go around and adding one that we had in the list, which would have been Swain Street. I think it was 3 Swain Street. So I'm okay with that, but at the same time, and I'm actually go take pictures for them and send them to her. But in the meantime, I don't want to remove one Henry, at least from the overall survey work.
It's an old historic contributing building, so.
If there's any information
base
that
of
you have that I could provide to them, that would be. Yeah.
No, I don't have
No.
any records of
Okay.
of the work.
Do the Ryan still own it?
I assume that they do, but yes, Harry Ryan, the owner, yeah.
Okay.
Well, in my day, it was Ray Howard, my
Hmm.
client, Raymond Howard.
Do
You know,
think they
Mickey,
might have
just your,
any- Do you think they might have any information in the NHA library on that?
Possible, but.
Photographs.
Mm,
OW.
you know, Mickey, just your testimony as in, your testimony, your experience, your history with the building should be acceptable. I mean, you're an eyewitness.
Yeah, I mean, I was there.
Right,
For
but
the
again,
reorienting?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
the fact that, I mean, as we know, PALD is really good about looking at Sanborn maps, they do a lot of, so for them to say, we think this is new, I was like,
It's probably because the orientation changed. It looked like a new building.
Well, and it's all exterior, what they're doing. There's no way that they
Yeah,
can
but the
go
footprint
inside.
should still be identifiable, even if it's 90 degrees off. They should still, the Sanborn maps should tell us some of the story.
I
But if
will,
it was a rectangle that was this way and then went this way and had an addition, then it would look like a new house.
It will look different, certainly.
Yeah,
all right, well, I will follow up with Ginny on
HOWAR.
Holly,
Mm-hmm.
the turnarounds are important
yes.
to be timely, but do we
Yes.
have, like, for instance, for the May 26th, those 19 forms, do we have a goal date for getting those turned around?
Not right at the moment. It depends. I mean, she's pretty good about sending on the date that she says she's gonna send them, so. I can look at the calendar and figure out what would be best, because as soon as she sends them, obviously I want to turn around to the entire commission to review. And then obviously give you guys a timeline to give back to me, so I can send to her.
Once again, that's right on top of us.
Mhm.
What's
That's
that?
next week,
Yeah,
a week from today.
it is. It is. Yeah, Memorial Day is coming up already. Anyway, where did the first part of the year go? I'll look at the calendar and I'll let you guys know what times frames, but it would be nice to have a good turnaround, for them, just because they are also gonna be anticipating comments from MHC. And the reason obviously is so there's not so many in each batch. But you know, it's still a good amount to review. But I'm excited, you guys. I don't know if we're still waiting for them to be on the town, not town's website, but on Macris, which eventually, once they're in their database, will be reflected on our GIS on the town's website. Right now, when you click on the MHC inventory, it's just the older ones or any of the ones that have been done through either historic tax credits or NPT's preservation restrictions. Other than that, they haven't really added. I did want to mention, which it was too late to really put on the agenda, but it's under the topic of surveys, so I think it's not much of a stretch, is the Sconset Trust ones. I did have a reminder email, if you will, to MHC to say, hey, we sent comments to Sconset Trust on their forms, and they were also sent to you and wondering if you had comments.
But
So
we got back to you.
yes,
Yeah.
Peter got back to me and sent me the comments that I in turn forwarded to
Yeah,
Betsy.
Betsy.
Yeah. So I told her, look, if there's some comments on there that she, you know, had questions or concerns with
Mhm.
per se, that I wouldn't mind being in between, you know, having a Zoom meeting with her and MHC to kind of go over them individually, because I know sometimes that can be the thing. At the end of the day, I know it's a lot of work, and I don't want to discourage them or Sconset Trust of moving forward with the work that you all have done already, because I think we can all agree that we appreciate having additional work outside of our survey projects to assist in.
But we definitely want, I mean, we want them online, so
Yes,
we've got to facilitate with you to get that done.
yes. Right now, it sounds like, okay, here they are. They did a lot of changes to what we as the NHC wanted on the forms. They were sent to MHC to review. He came back with a list of, you know, review comments on them. And I don't want that to be discouraged of, you know, so I'm willing to assist in any way
We
on
can
that.
talk, we'll talk
Yeah.
about that.
But I just want to mention that that's been still on the radar, even though we haven't really talked about it. And, you know, again, I know I don't want to speak for this commission, but obviously we're appreciative of having Sconset Trust
No, I
continue
know,
that
and
work.
we've got a lot of backlog right now, so we'll discuss it.
Understood, same. I understand how that is.
You understand that, but
We're definitely happy with, I'm just so grateful for the work that Sconset Trust is doing out in Wisconsin as we focus on these essential parts of town. But last time the surveys that were done, it seemed like we got to review them. Are there new surveys that are?
no,
Okay.
not, I think you've probably seen. them.
Yeah, these are the 12 that they did that we already
Yeah.
reviewed, trying to finalize that. So they are, and understand, there's parts that unfortunately, because PAL does this all the time, they've been doing it for 40 years. They know the methodologies and nuance, I guess, of the process and what MHC is looking for.
Mhm.
And
It was like the dates of the architect. We didn't put them in, the dates.
oh,
thing,
yeah,
that
and there was a
kind
lot of
thing.
that kind of
There's a
stuff
lot of
that Betsy did a really great job
Yeah.
of
adding.
adding
after.
to it. But it's also the formality of the submittals. So we, as the town, don't formally submit, it's the consultant. And in this case, I would expect that to be from Sconset Trust, you know, and Betsy and Marcia to send them to MHC. They not only require the hard copy, the printal, yeah, so that's kind of the stuff where I kind of want to talk to MHC on, say,
Yeah.
at what point can we, the town, take care of this part? You know, again, I want to make sure that we're not going to discourage you guys to continue this, because
No, because what
the
we'd
work
rather
they
do is
is fantastic.
do
So,
survey another house. We also do the interiors, which
Right.
I think is extremely important. And I understand, you know, PAL can't.
Like,
do
I think
that.
one of the comments was, you know, they've listed, because a lot of them, they did those extensive surveys, histories on, obviously all that information, they're trying to take this big report and condense it onto the the boilerplate form. But there was a comment about, oh, you can find a detailed report on this property at this website, which goes to Sconset Trust website, but I think it wasn't as clear to the
Yeah,
link, stuff like
it's not
that.
as- Yeah, and the bibliographies, I think there was problems with
There's,
that.
yeah, and that's something too, is I know that was a comment. I think it was Betsy brought it up, is that PAL's bibliography, which is also goes back to the survey plan bibliography, is boilerplate now. It's across the board.
Yeah.
Do we do that for Sconset, or do we want to have Sconset's be specific because Sconset is specific? And it's got so
No, I
much of
think
its own rich history, and that's another question so there's some questions that I have that it would be beneficial to sit down with Peter and Michael, if Michael's available, with Betsy and Marcia, if they're
Mhm.
interested, so I'm willing to help with that.
Great, thank you. The whole goal is to get them online.
Yep, and as soon as they bless them, then they'll be able to
Yeah.
provide, some of them I know didn't have any of the NAN numbers, the actual macros numbers. Some of them did, there were updates to previous survey
Oh,
effort.
Right.
So that's when they're okay with it, they provide the list and move
Yeah.
on.
All right, ongoing project.
Yep. Happy to see it.
Thank you, Holly. So next on the agenda are the adjustments to the NHC website. And
Just to make sure we get to the joint meeting, can we skip down to that? Because I think we should cover that.
oh, that was gonna be 2 seconds. I mean, not the joint meeting. But it's just getting
Right.
having the preservation plan on there. Last I looked, it wasn't there.
It's on the preservation planning page, and it should be linked to the historical commission's page.
If it can go on the page, I think the fewer links that you have to do to get to it, it's just such a great document that I think if it were on every town site, it
Oh,
would be
okay,
helpful, but
I'll talk to
at least,
Florence.
on ours. Okay, so
I'm just gonna put that, Holly's gonna talk. about it.
Yeah, because, yeah, that's her bailiwick.
Okay.
See what she
Um,
recommends.
well, that- all right, so the joint meeting that we're gonna have on the first. Is there? It would be great to have your idea of an agenda that we could
Yes,
discuss, but now with like, do you have one?
I have a draft agenda, topics that the HDC chairs were, okay, and these are some of the topics, some of them are crossed over from last time, the commissions met. And I was gonna circulate that with you and Georgia, so you can take a look at it, but,
I was hoping to discuss, that's what this last section
Yeah.
is about. But if you can throw that up, if you can throw the draft up, then we could look at that and use that as a framework to talk about.
I don't have it with me on this. so
Okay.
That's,
Do you remember what the?
so
I'm sorry.
one of the things, obviously, I want to do a presentation on the important survey work, because obviously you all know that, but I think understanding that it's a mutual effort between the commissions. That, you all help facilitate the survey work, but then the survey is used for HDC applications and such. So there's that component as well. And I don't think all the HDC commissioners understand the ins and outs of the survey plan. I think that's also important.
That's why we didn't.
Yeah, it's important. I think that, and it's to say, because that's another thing, want everybody to be clear on why we're a CLG, the benefit of being a CLG, and here's a fruit of our labor so far, and this is what we plan on, continuing doing that. And there, you gotta also remember, there's a couple of there's a member on the HDC who's new, doesn't really, she's just starting out. So there's gonna be a little bit of repetitiveness for everybody else, but kind of wanna have that in there. And I think this will be your first CLG meeting too, right? Yep. So there's that, just a brief overview of it. I have asked Mary if she would help facilitate a discussion around kind of the demolitions, but the work that remained, the study that they were doing, and given an update on how that, because that was something that both commissions were included on with the WPI students when they looked at demolition and where all that goes. And again, I think it's important to, we always want the town to lead by example, but at the same time, when there's nonprofits or public side that can help facilitate that conversation in those studies and stuff is very, very helpful. So definitely want to have a chunk of it on that. And then, of course, obviously the NAPC review is definitely on there, and having that, discussion, historic district wide, both commissions together. And of course, we know that NAPC knows already that we are a CLG. They know that. Some of their trainers are CLG trainers themselves. So, and then really I think that was it.
You mentioned earlier building with Nantucket.
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. And building with Nantucket in mind. And we kind of already went down that road of, hey, HDC Historical Commission wants to help updating. That didn't go over well, which I rightfully so, I understand. I think it would be beneficial to have the discussion on how this commission can assist in educating the public on the good components of building with Nantucket in mind. That's how specific I would like to get. I think that would be helpful. Because, you all have always said, how can we help you in this whole process? And I think that would be good to have that conversation and go over that. What you all envision with it, how it would be done. If there's things that they're looking at that would be helpful, that we all know there's timeless sections of building with Nantucket in mind that people are just overlooking. And again, we're having to be repetitive in the review process on everything from additive massing to the placement of windows to the right windows. Yeah, it's you guys know. So it's I think that would be good to have that open dialogue on where because again, they don't have the opportunity nor the time to be able to really, that this would be a good opportunity, I think, what I'm getting at for the HDC commissioners to say, hey, thank you, historical commission members, and maybe is there something else that we would like that assistance on? So
to update the book,
yes,
we had to hire a consultant to do that.
correct.
Nobody's here is doing that.
Not right now.
And
no.
the funding is there to do it.
Yes,
CPC funding,
yes. Which, quite frankly, I think it would need to be upped
perhaps.
from what it
I'll bet they're
was.
still willing to do that, I would
Yeah.
think. So
Yeah.
how do we get from, we have the money, we have the idea,
The desire.
the desire, who then is it somebody who's gonna find the consultant that's gonna help us do the,
We would have to go through the regular procurement process, so that'd be something I would have to facilitate.
Putting out bids.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
should we hope that like at this meeting, everybody's like, yes, okay, and so then the next step.
Correct.
Go ahead and do
We
that.
would
Yeah.
want to have a mutual, okay, and quite frankly, again, I personally think we would have to request more funding. There's no doubt in my mind that what we've, I think, originally got is not sufficient enough. And be having it that there's mutual agreement. But the HDC is facilitating that, saying, yes, we would want to move forward with that and have that done.
I mean, they've gotta give sort of the mandate to you to say, go ahead and do
Yeah.
that.
Yes,
So hopefully
we
we
could
talk
agree
to
at
this
this
is the answer
Right.
at this meeting, because this is, so I think that's a good thing that like, we need a call to action of like.
Yep.
If you guys agree, we're going to then move forward.
Is this
Well,
gonna be
maybe
face to
not us,
face?
but,
this is Zoom only.
That's too bad, I think.
No.
The only thing is, I didn't know if, not to add to the agenda, but just if we briefly, like maybe a slide or two, that they understand. One of the great things about the CLG is how we have access to a lot of this.
Oh, yeah.
Grant
So
funding,
I'm,
like maybe a reminder.
oh
or
yeah,
something.
there will be, that will definitely be in there.
Okay,
Yeah, there was some additional information that I put in the agenda from last time that talks about it, you know, when we were created, what the benefits are, what our
Mhm.
responsibilities are.
Well, we
And
need reminding, because that was a.
well, I think it's important because that's kind of why when I did send
yeah.
save
like,
the
we
date,
want
like,
them to
why
be
are we
like,
meeting?
Don't blow us
Because-
off for our meetings, because it's important, because we can apply, we have a bunch of grants that we're gonna apply to. And hopefully get some money for, and we only get access to them because we're CLG, so it's important that we maintain it, you know,
There's benefits of
yeah.
definitely being a CLG, and we haven't really seen all of them either, so.
Okay. So that was the only thing I thought we should just add is like reminding them. of,
Yep.
So I'll just say reminder that of the benefits or something.
The why, the big why.
So after our last CLG meeting, we wrote up an MOU, that's been sitting with them.
Okay.
Since. Is there a way that we can move forward on that? Or
I
at least
can-
have that be a topic?
I can ask the other chairs if that's something they want to move forward with. I
That was a
wasn't,
distribution of
Just
duties and.
Who does what, who
Assigning-
does what,
assigning
just so that there's a
a
clear
clear-
understanding. I feel like everybody knows, but
Make it official.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Who's gonna be chairing this meeting?
it's a joint chair. It's between both the chairs.
Ray and Angus.
Mhm. Yep. So basically it's two, yeah, you.
I'll
It's,
take notes.
yes.
Why did we
thank you.
get canceled? Was that just a miscommunication?
I think that was an old list or something. I don't know. That's why I followed up with the other one to
Yeah, thank
say,
you. Very,
please, now
very
it's on your
quickly.
calendar and yeah.
because I'd already scratched. Yeah.
Well, like, I think Ben Norman was on that list. He's
Yeah.
not on the commission. I think Hillary was on that list. I
Mhm.
think there was
So it
Susan
seemed
and
to refer
and
to.
and her position's
22.
gone. Yeah, yeah.
So,
So
okay.
Regarding the demo aspect, Mary, are you on? Holly-
Yes, I am.
Holly had mentioned that you might be talking about that at our CLG meeting.
Uh-huh.
And that's good to hear. It'd be interesting to know what, you know, what all you would bring up in that. I did reach out to Jen Doherty at Mass Historical to see if she would be available or interested in giving sort of a presentation on policies and practices around demolition. And she said that that she would certainly be willing to, but you know, she would want to, you know, have that be a desire from the HTC and Holly as well as us. So I don't know if that would be helpful to be part of it, and I'd be happy to hear anybody's comments on that.
You know, Val keeps bringing up at the HDC meetings that they need more of a process for how to review the demolitions. And I think that this is a big topic for them, and I think they'll be open to any. Sounds like they'll be open to any information they can get.
How long is this structured for? 2 hours?
two. Yeah. I thought that would be.
I wanted to make a comment about that if I could. I just wanted to suggest that time is so precious with the group, and the agenda is long and a mix of, you know, instruction and some pretty meaty discussion. I'm wondering if everybody should get a printed and bound copy of the survey plan, like as soon as possible, and be requested to read it, familiarize themselves with it. I think that you really want this to be a working session, and to have people in the mode that it's their assignment to cram this into their brain ahead of time and come prepared to discuss it, as opposed to come with sort of a passive attitude, which is they're going to have a bunch of stuff just presented to them. That was just one comment, to have the time be really helpful. And the MOU, just that was their request. They wanted to have that, and then it just kind of just got dropped. They formed a subcommittee, which was Abby and Diane, and then we had Angus and myself, and we worked on it and made another proposal that the four of us agreed to, but then there wasn't any feedback about it. So I wonder if they even still want it. I mean, there's reason.
Well, isn't that why we're putting it on the agenda, so we can discuss it?
Yeah, maybe they don't want it anymore. I don't know.
I mean, I think we put it on the agenda and we get a yay or a nay.
I wasn't
I think-
planning on it.
I think with the agenda, I think we should make sure that it's very like call to action, so like. These things, like, there's some background, right? Some of it is educational, but I think with the things that like the MOU, it's a call to action, like building with Nantucket in mind, like we just need to be like. This isn't, I don't even think it should be this, it shouldn't be like a huge discussion about it, just be like, yes or no,
Right,
let's decide,
Right.
everybody's, like I. We just need to make sure people understand that.
well, there are lots of things to talk about,
Yeah.
and we could talk about for days.
Right,
But-
exactly.
But we do want to like accomplish things in the meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you for that, Hillary. And that's important. The survey is so much more than, the individual survey.
Right.
In everything that is written up in there about our history and preservation, and there's so many aspects that that everyone in this realm, the HTC and us, and hopefully, everyone who cares on Nantucket should be familiar with this document. It's such a great document. I think that's a great idea. Is that feasible to have a copy to everybody so that they can?
can't you send it I think I would recommend sending it electronically.
I mean, yeah.
I think
it's
that's
available
gonna
on the
be
town's
easier
website,
than-
so I don't have time to print it out, so
Yeah,
that's.
I would send it
sorry,
electronically, but tell people, please. Review and come with questions, and that way, again, when Holly, you're doing your presentation, you highlighting certain things. But it's very like purposeful, like what the things that we want them to discuss, like take away from it. But I think I would say just send it electronically, I wouldn't print, I mean.
Right.
I mean, I think it's important. People, when they hear a plan, don't necessarily understand that a plan actually has action items
Mhm.
that you're.
Yeah.
And one plan also can tie into another plan, and maybe that's just me, because I've been a planner for almost 20 years, so. It's important to realize that it's a path moving forward of surveying, and surveying is going to help the HDC
Mhm.
on understanding on whether or not a structure before them is actually contributing. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm having to justify on why an old 89 survey says non-contributing, and an architect is going, well, it says non-contributing.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, Mr. Chair, I have to explain this again. And you've seen it.
I have many
It's,
times.
and it's like, I want to. Anyway, it's frustrating. So I'm seeing, as we all know, the survey effort, very important to outline. We're not going to have surveys done of structures that were built when I was born, because we do, which is weird. We're going to have surveys. We're going to have surveys that were
We're
are
not
contributing.
historical.
No, so it's like trying to emphasize that, yes, we have this plan to help us move forward, and what I would like people to understand, to get out of it. And maybe even have some of the commissioners that haven't had the chance to ask some questions that maybe this group will be able to, help facilitate. Have a discussion about it, a fruit of a labor.
Yes.
The survey plan. For each application. That comes up in the HDC, the the HTC members are not gonna go look at the survey plan of that particular property. That's why Holly's there to present the information from that survey plan to them. So, you know, Holly's the main conduit between them and that plan. And they have to, maybe what we need to emphasize is how important that information is, because
Yeah.
they tend to ignore it a lot.
Right, like they need to understand the importance, so that's what I think, again, like going back to the agenda, let's be very purposeful and like specific. And Holly, I think it's great, like you're saying, pulling it out, and even like the thing about the demo. Like when we're talking about, like the action item should be, if Val's saying they need more of a process, like. Do you want us to assist you on like developing a process, or like what is that? But also like making sure that we have that like call to action at the end of like, so. We're not just gonna talk about demolition, but like, why are we talking about it? Because we need to develop process. Okay, what do you guys need to do that? How can we help? But I think if we make sure it's very, you know, purposeful,
Yeah,
then maybe it'll be helpful. I mean, I don't know how it's going.
Well, it's a big subject. Demolition it's very involved in many aspects of the historical development. The survey plan, obviously, and what that, you know, unfortunately, the individual HTC members sometimes aren't looking so much as to what's historical as to what they think is currently architecturally appropriate.
Mhm.
And there's some not terribly attractive old buildings that are being demolished because they look at it and say, well, that would never have been approved today.
I hate hearing that.
I know, and that's exactly what happened on Sherburne. So, yeah. up
Which
and
is not over yet.
up. Okay, good. So, you know, they need to know the important things to be looking at during a demolition application. And I don't think they totally understand that. That's part of their process goals, I think, is to get
Yes,
to there.
it's understanding. They have the power over other historic districts in the Commonwealth.
that's the thing, they do have the power, but I'm not sure that they're aware of what tools they have and how they can use them, and that's why I was thinking that it might make sense to have someone like Jen Darty explain it. Is that something that the commission feels would be beneficial?
Yeah, definitely, to have someone of another authority position to help give them more information. I think it'd be very helpful.
Because the advisory groups have said what they can, and Holly, every meeting that it's not rare for demo to come up, that you're expressing your concerns about it. Is that something that I should pursue further?
I think it's important maybe to have Jen, but if we have such a big agenda, could we do a separate meeting that's
Yeah,
just about
We don't have,
demolition?
we could.
That's the thing, is that when we first started with the CLG meetings, we anticipated that there would be more than the one mandatory meeting, and there's been no movement because the HDC is just, under a pile of
We're getting
projects.
better.
I thought they're kind of,
Well, we're getting better. I mean,
well,
on the flip side, now there's more staff
I think that
approvals.
would be
for
ideal. I
staff.
mean, you have a separate meeting.
yeah, I feel like it sounds like to your point, it sounds like it's a big topic. Maybe what we can bring it up on the agenda is like, hey, this is something we want to talk about more. If you guys are open to it, and maybe that's a call to action, we'd like to have a specific meeting. We can have somebody from the state. We could even
Future topics.
like have, we could have somebody from the state. We could have, I mean, I don't know if Mary talks and I don't want to make Mary have like 5 meetings, but but I think we should say, like, we really want to do a working session just about demolition. And that way we could devote the entire conversation.
That would be better instead of trying to cram it.
Yeah,
into-
because I'm just afraid it's that, like, we can talk about it and say, like, this is something.
Yeah.
That is important, but let's have a separate meeting. I don't know, that's just my thought, because it sounds like it's enough.
I think it's a good thought, because it could take over this whole meeting.
Yeah, and we don't want to like derail everything.
No, I don't want to derail, but there are not a lot of opportunities to
No, that's
have any
fair.
sort of impact
Well,
on the
I
agenda
think
for the HDC.
I do think that, we are seeing a little bit less of amount of applications to fill this slate. And the fact that they're caught up, you see, we don't have any straggling, future action items on there. Which is great. It's just, yeah, that's how many applications are coming through. So I think that would be beneficial. The reason why it's on a Thursday is because, as you know, they also meet on Thursdays, but it's every other Thursday to kind of keep it synced with their meetings. I will honestly say I was taking it off of their time frame because I want to make sure that they're all there. This is important. I know for the most part you guys will be here. But it's, this is an important meeting and yeah. Mhm.
So I have one comment about that. I totally agree with the way you guys are framing this. I think shaping the agenda and having buy-in from both groups on the agenda is just critical. That if what your idea is that you really want to have two meetings, decide what do you want to really get done in the first meeting and what do you want to really get done in the second meeting. And it might be that what you want to really get done in the first meeting is to secure an agreement about the second meeting and, or even have the HCC decide, yeah, actually, we could really lean on this group to help us with demolition practice. But the meeting is so soon. I think a meeting of the chairs to work that out and nail down the agenda that they can both agree to with Holly, it's got to happen soon, or you might find that it's not possible to get to the outcome you want.
Yeah, I'm not, no, that's up to the other chairs. I can't speak for them.
Well, I think that it sounds like this first one is the one where we're gonna try to get those action items. Like, and then I think we say we want to have,
Discussed.
to get the action items discussed, and then we say we want to have a future working session about demolition, but I mean, because the action items are really like we talked about. The MOU, building with the Nantucket in mind, and then I think it's key, we talk about the survey work and the NAPC review, but then we propose you can have a separate session just talking about demolition. Then we can have some Jen from the state come. That's why I'm saying it, I don't know if we want Mary to present at the second meeting when we talk about demolition.
Well, if that was part of the. See, I just haven't seen any
Yeah.
agenda and we're, 2 weeks from the meeting, so
Yeah.
it's coming up.
But then I think if you move that to the second meeting, so
Well,
maybe,
it's,
And the survey work, I think the survey plan is really important to.
yeah, I think we
To
should,
digest and be able to discuss some.
right,
But, there's a lot that we're familiar with that, as Holly has said, that they're not necessarily familiar with. And so I think that it's important for them to get caught up,
Mhm.
but maybe it's not the best use of our time to re-educate us while educating them on it. So
Yeah.
to a certain degree, I think it's very important for us to talk about the big plan, the survey plan.
yeah, maybe
but-
in the working session, if we wanna dive into stuff on it, that would be more the place. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, yeah, I just don't, I want the things that really involve both of the commissions to be the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that sounds right, so I think then, Ollie, it sounds like you give the high level overview, like you talked about, the survey work, what's
Mhm.
important, but then we tell them we're hoping to schedule another meeting. So if there's specific questions and specific stuff, we could talk about that, and that we also want to talk about demolition and do a working set, like have that. So then at that second meeting, it's very hands-on working session, if they're open to it.
One comment is that, of course, there have been a couple meetings already, and the recordings are on the town website. So it's not like you're starting from zero. I thought the meetings were very positive and really encouraging. The minutes exist, but weren't posted, so it might be worthwhile looking at what happened before and just refreshing everyone's memory about the positive progress that happened. That you're not starting from zero.
No, I know
Good point.
we're not starting from zero, but at the same time, we do have a couple of commissioners on both commissions that were not involved in the original one. I think it's important to kind of do a refresher for
Yeah.
other people too, so.
Yeah, I just meant to circulate the past minutes again.
Okay, yep, that's on the agenda as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, and like you said, it's always good to remind people why the survey work is important, even if they were on it before.
The
It's
survey
not
work
gonna
is
hurt.
the catalyst
Yeah.
of why you tell somebody, don't demo that. I mean,
Yeah.
sorry, I just,
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think that's the right thing. I think we keep that in
Yeah.
the agenda no matter what.
So Holly, when are you anticipating putting out your ideas about the agenda? And,
early next week
okay,
at the latest.
okay.
I actually would like to. send
And then
some
do you
drafts.
facilitate the chair's meeting, or is that?
I
do we do that
asked,
independently?
that's up to the other chairs. I asked and I didn't really get that favored because they're of course busy. So
And is it,
I'm trying,
when you're saying chairs, are we talking
I'm,
the chairs or the vice chairs as well?
yes, and vice chair.
Okay.
Yeah, both of them. I think it's important.
Tom, you look like you want to say something. What is it?
Motion to adjourn.
You're,
Is that what he said?
you're muted.
No, you're muted, but I was guessing that's what you said.
Great list.
Oh, wait, Tom, I had something before we close. The last thing is, Tom, the wind farm lobbyist, the person is Andrew Garbarino. He's a representative in Long Island. He's the person in Congress you guys want to talk to.
Right.
That was it. That's the last thing I had.
I move we adjourn.
Do we hear a
Sounds good.
second? Second. Thank you, Mickey. Abby?
Aye.
I as well. So we are adjourned. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you at the CLG meeting.
I have a couple edits and then I'll send these out to everybody. And I have on here